It's Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. Ha! It's Feedback Friday, which means it's Friday. And that means it's cause for happiness. And an interesting thing happened this week. A lot of interesting things happened this week, and I'm going to try to be as concise as possible because there's a few things I want to get to. But the first thing I wanted to say is that a little while back, when I was sort of starting to officially build my YouTube channel, instead of just farting around, actually sort of, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to take it seriously. Somebody told me that there is sort of a YouTube fatigue that goes on, and you have to constantly be sort of treating it like an organic space because you lose viewers and new ones come on. And I think that advice was actually proven correct this week, and that's very interesting to me because most of the stuff that people have told me about what you have to do on YouTube is utter nonsense. And what happened this week that was very interesting is that I sort of stepped away from my understanding of what my audience wanted and did something just because I wanted to, and that was the Tuesday rant that I broke from the format of Tuesdays to just sort of go, I'm going to play a game and rant like I did in the old days, and people said they wanted more structured content. And it was actually the most viewed video this week. I mean, viewing is down, I think, because we're getting into sort of university reading weeks and people's schedules are disrupted. But this was actually healthy traffic on this rant video that was just me playing a game and talking. And before, those videos didn't do very well. But not only did this rant video do well, it had almost 150 likes, like thumbs ups. And so that tells me that the audience that is watching my content now is not the same as the audience who used to watch my content, which means it's time to do games again. And I have to wonder, okay, how do I do this now? Do I take requests? Do I, just choose the games I like sort of as a recommendation thing? What I don't want to do is get into that critical space. What do I mean by don't want to get into that critical space? Part of my thing is I want to associate with games like a gamer. I don't want to become that stereotypical critic. And I don't think, okay, I shouldn't steal somebody's words because there was a comment this week that I thought it was a really great comment. Really great YouTube comment. Wow, that's awesome. But someone said, they have no problem with movie-style reviews. They said a large subset of modern gamers are just here to watch movies with buttons, different audiences. They went on to say that big review sites hire too many like-minded people, and game journalism needs more diversity. And this is a good way to put it. I'm not going to review games like somebody else. I'm going to review games based on the games I like. And the games I like are not necessarily games that are like movies, although some of them are. I don't tend to be a fan of, walking novel type things, like the Telltale Games type things. But I really liked Walking Dead Season 1 because I thought it was a well-told story and I liked a lot of the characters. And I thought that it sort of had just enough gameplay to satisfy me, but I normally need more sort of interacting with game through controller. And I think that means that I should do the gameplay heavy games. I mean, I like moderately combo-based games, so I don't have to put in 10 things to do a move. I wore my thumbs down way too much playing fighting games, and I don't have the hand strength to do that anymore. My hands fatigue too quickly nowadays. But stuff like, I know I'm gonna play the crap out of Uncharted 4 when it comes out. I know that, but I'd like to do indie games as well, and that's where we get sort of into, do people want to watch indie games. I don't know. Like, I don't want to do the shticky Five Nights at Freddy's thing, because I think I'm sort of a boring survival horror type of person. I don't get scared. I laugh a lot. And the more ass-clenchingly terrifying something is I laugh, maybe that's amusing to some people, but I don't know. I don't know. This is what Feedback Friday is for. What do you guys think? How should I do this gameplay thing? Because you know what? It's a lot faster to do a gameplay video, because when it's done, it's done. There's no editing, there's no sourcing images, there's nothing. It's just, whoop, I play for 30 minutes, ta-da! And we're clear, let's go drink. Yeah, really, really interested in your guys' thoughts on this, because obviously there's a lot of people watching now who weren't around when I was doing, I got obsessed with The Long Dark for a while and was playing that game religiously, and it wasn't getting the numbers. Like, it's not like there was no trend to it, right? Like, it wasn't like it started high and dropped off, which would tell me, like, well, just don't play the game that much. It was all over the place. And back then, anything I did something sort of more structured, more essay style, that got crazy traffic. And the, gameplay stuff only had a few hundred views. Now it seems to be people want to see gameplay stuff. I don't know what that is, but help, guidance is requested. This is why we do Feedback Fridays, so I can get your guys' feedback. The other thing I wanted to talk about was some stuff that has nothing to do with the video content I did this week. I don't know if you guys saw the Blackish this week on Wednesday. It was called Hope. And it was, people say it was a Black Lives Matter episode, but it wasn't. They never actually used that phrase deliberately. The show creator said that he feels like that movement's been politicized and he didn't want to alienate people. He wanted it to be a show about parents having to explain the realities of the world to their children, and how this is something that modern parents have to do, that parents even 20 years ago could just tell their kids to turn off the TV, and there was no internet that kids could go to. And it came from two main sources, apparently, from what I've read, from the All in the Family episode back in the 1970s, where they dealt with rape. And that was not something that was dealt with on television, certainly not something that was dealt with in television comedies back in the day. And that was the strength of All in the Family, is they could go there every so often. Obviously, you can't do it all the time. But the other inspiration was a conversation that the creator had with his own son, a line given to the little boy, Jack, on Blackish, was actually something his own son said watching the Ferguson riots. And it was such a powerful episode to me that I missed the first 8 minutes of it. So, I record it because it's my favorite comedy on network TV. There's very little TV that really makes me laugh. Because I prefer video games. I get very bored by television. So I tend to watch action-driven stuff, because, of course, then I can see, like to give you guys a sense of me, my big wish for The Flash coming up is that Gorilla Grodd and King Shark have this massive brawl. I will be happy if that happens. It's the same way that I said when the Avengers movie came out, that I would give it a thumbs up if Thor punched Iron Man. And Thor punched Iron Man, sent him through a wall. So, all the other issues I had with the Avengers, I officially like the Avengers because Thor punched Iron Man. This is me, guys. Like, I can't hide it. I'm a butthead about this stuff. So when a comedy is funny, and why don't I find comedy is funny? Because people who don't know, I was a comedy writer for Canadian TV, late night Canadian TV, for many, many, many years. And when you're a comedy writer, you end up appreciating comedy instead of just laughing at comedy. And you see the bones, you see the structure, and it's really hard to laugh because you're that aware of what they're doing. And so when a show just really makes me laugh, that's an amazing thing to me. And the only two shows that really, really make me laugh now are Blackish and Silicon Valley. And it's two like completely different parts of my existence, those two shows. But I feel, even though they are shows, and this is why Identity is something I am very passionate about, but I get really pissed off the way it's handled in most social justice circles. By the way, thanks for laughing at the safe space joke in the rant. I was not sure how that was going to go over, but I left it in, so thanks for being cool about that. But, Blackish is a nostalgia trip for me. And I know that show isn't created for me. I am no more the target demographic for Blackish than I am the target demographic for Empire. However, I grew up, through the 1980s and the 1990s in a predominantly black neighborhood. And so a lot of those cultural touchstones, a lot of the social references to the Afro picks and the grape sodas and the silver dollars and Crown Royal bags, that's nostalgia for me. That was my childhood. And I couldn't relate to shows like That 70s Show, or a lot of the shows set in the 80s, or even the shows, for lack of a better term, for white people set in the 90s. I don't connect. The only thing I really connected to with Gone Home was the Street Fighter codes. Obviously any child of the 90s who did that whole, console arcade hybrid experience where you practiced at home and then went to play at the arcade, and then you realized the configuration was different at the arcade, and so it ate your quarters anyway. But I don't connect to those games, to those stories, the stories that, based on the way I look, I should respond to. I respond to shows like Blackish, who speak to my childhood experience with things like Kid and Play, and they made a Ray Don Chong joke, which is something that everybody can get. It's, that's not quote unquote, African American humor, but it really came crashing home to me how stupid people are about identity, because I was tweeting and I was talking to a friend of mine I haven't talked to in a long time. We used to work together in the Much Music days, and she sort of went her way, and I, stayed here. She doesn't live in Canada anymore. But we were talking about it, and we're like, holy crap, and we were talking about the whole thing about everybody holding their breath during Obama's walk from the limo to the inauguration, and everybody, kind of, and a lot of people thought it. That's what was so true about this episode, is a lot of people were going, oh, please don't get shot, please don't get shot. You couldn't help but be afraid. And, we were talking about that, and then, I'd had a bad day on Wednesday for reasons that have nothing to do with the internet, for a change. It was real life stuff, and somebody being just really disappointing on a personal level. It was sort of, those, all I'll say about it is, those experiences where you thought a relationship with someone was more resilient than it turned out to be, and the next thing you know, it's not that you lost a friend, it's you realize you never really had one. That person who you thought had your back didn't. And, it was one of those things where found out slightly easy way instead of a hard way. But it wasn't fun. It wasn't pleasant. And, after that, to sit down and watch a show about how black parents in America, and I'm going to say black guys, please don't get offended. I know that names for racially driven things are difficult. We don't say African American in Canada, for obvious reasons, okay? We say black or we say people of color. And we say people of color for people who are, it's usually for people who are mixed race or people who are like, because I mean in Canada we have people who are, you know, part black, part First Nations, or Haitian black as opposed to Somali, or you know, we're a very multicultural city in Toronto, and so a lot of people are mixed race, and so we tend to use the term people of color. So we're not saying, you know, Asian, Black, Hispanic, First Nations, Irish person. It's just you are a mix of things and you are delightful. And that's what a lot of people prefer to be called because it's too long to say Asian, Black, Hispanic, Irish, First Nations person. But some people got offended when I said people of color. And I'm like, really? And there's no point in fighting. I'll talk about it, but I will not accept that a term that is in popular use up here is somehow racist because someone else thinks so. But difficult, right? But as I'm talking about this Blackish show, I said, you know, I did this bad day, but I am very appreciative that, you know, Blackish reminded me that some people have problems much worse than me because you know, I'm sorry, this idea that you have to sit your kids down and somehow, without terrifying them, because you don't want to raise frightened children, have that talk with them that the world is going to respond to you differently because of the color of your skin. And that's something that Black parents in America have to do. And, you know, other people may not have to. And I'm sure that there are different racial things for different racial groups. I'm not denying that, but this is something unique. And to me, that is a persistent and ongoing thing that makes parenting even harder. And, you know, I know this because, you know, a friend of mine up here had to sort of have that talk with her son, and it was painful for her. And, you know, it's painful to watch him being profiled in stores. And I get angry because I watch them treat him like a potential shoplifter. And then, you know, I come in and talk to him, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, you know, you do see the racism even here in Toronto where it's absolutely inexcusable. People don't have an excuse. They don't have the argument that they don't know people. If you only keep to your own racial group in Toronto, you are trying to do that. It's so hard to stay isolated that way. It's too multicultural. And a couple people on Twitter started saying, you know, that's a whitish thing to say. I'm like, no, it has nothing to do with race, dude. It has to deal with experience and me recognizing, because that's not just about race, right? That is the whole police shooting thing is not just about race. It's an American thing as well. We don't worry up here about our kids getting shot so much as other things, right? And I shouldn't say are, because my kids wouldn't have this issue the same way. Then again, you know, the most high profile shooting of a young person, and the cop was actually convicted of attempted murder. I think that was the charge that actually stuck. But that was Sammy Yatim. You know, he was, I forget what his background was, Middle Eastern of some kind. So we don't have the same racial tensions here as in America. So, you know, that's not just about skin color to me. It's that I, you know, not only am white, I don't live in America. And for somebody to make it about race, I admit, it really hit me like a brick. It really, you know, it took a moment where a lot of people on Twitter were feeling a sense of togetherness. You know, we were all watching this show with, you know, made by and for Black Americans, but we were all relating to it on a common emotional level. And that to me is the power of populist media. That's why I love it. That's why I do it. That's why I don't advocate for, Oscar-winning films and indie things and all these smart things for conscious people. It's, no. It's the people who really are marginalized and the people who really are disenfranchised are not going to talk about these things in the way that over-educated, under-challenged, I would say, people do. They're not going to talk about, necessarily microaggressions. They're not going to talk about their experiences in that college way, because they couldn't afford college, right? Or it wasn't seen as something you did in that you went to work because you needed to support the family, right? And so, it was that sort of thing of, and yes, if it matters, these people had, and I don't necessarily know that the people on Twitter were in fact black people. They could have just had black icons and were trying to troll. But, and one was a troll account, but I'm like, you know what? I felt that those trolls completely defied the intended message of that show, which was, the creator said, I think his name's Kenya Barris, the creator of Blackish, but I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. But his stated intent was to make a show for everybody and something that everyone could relate to about, talking to your kids about difficult things. And I felt that these angry people on Twitter were just completely opposing that intent. And one of the things I like about video game culture and the video game community, and I think one of the things that people from outside of gaming don't understand about gaming is that veneer of, what's the word, niceness or, respectability or politeness, where everybody mutters under their breath the bad things instead of coming out and saying the horrible, offensive stuff that you're thinking. Gamers just say it. And that leads to more conflict, that leads to more clashes. But at the end of the day, you end up knowing that you can actually trust the people you care to associate with. And I think sort of the confluence of events that happened this week has reminded me of that. It reminded me, like, that's what I like about gaming, and that's something I need to keep. And, one thing that really hammered that home was the party chatter this week about with Robert Kingett, and people, it was cool because we talked about, shrinking text in games, and Robert's legally blind. And a lot of people agreed with him, and people were really cool about not, and I put a little thing off the top and everything like that, like I really presented it with intent, but people were really cool about not being assholes about the fact that he has a stutter, and it takes him a little longer to get his thoughts out sometimes. People were really supportive. And these are the moments I love. And one of the things I've learned from the internet, and this is so opposite to the real world, because the real world is all based on, these are the rules and this is the things you're supposed to do, and there are certain, social faux pas that you're not supposed to do. Whereas I find on the internet, if you want something, ask for it. Tell the internet what you want, either unintentionally or intentionally, and you will probably get it from at least someone. And that's what I like about gamers and being a gamer and talking to gamers, is there's bullshit, but there's a lot less bullshit, if that makes any sort of sense. And what I mean by that is that we will have the fights that other people avoid for the sake of politeness. And we will decide very quickly, okay, that person's an asshole. I'm just not going to bother with them. Whereas other people will sort of be like, well, yeah, but, there's this reason and that reason, and there's this reason to associate with these people for either, political reasons or practical reasons or whatever. When you're there to game, you're there to have fun. And so you don't want to associate with anybody who's not having fun. And this sort of, loops back into the original thing I was talking about game reviews and the different ways of reviewing games, and the very salient comment that one person made. I don't say names, not because I'm trying to deny them credit. I don't want to embarrass them or put them on the spot, because I don't want somebody going after them because they disagree or whatever. That's the only reason. So, you know who you are, and thank you. It was a good comment. To their point, I have been doing this. I've been reviewing games enough to sort of know my strengths. And I think more reviewers kind of have to recognize when they are going to be dead set against a game. They're not going to like it. I try to only pick games to review that I have a chance of enjoying. Because I kind of see that my thing is not being a cheerleader is the wrong word. One, because it's gendered. Two, because, I did cheerleading and it hurt a lot. You get kicked in the face a lot, because I was a bass. Because I'm all about that bass. I'm getting distracted. But I'm an advocate for games. And I love games, and I want that to come through, and I don't want to be that cranky critic, even though there's some people I really like who I find very, very funny, who absolutely exhibit that space. That's not me. Sorry, inhabit that space. That's not me. It's not me. I'm a person who wants to talk about games I really like. And that's my passion. That's my skill. That's where I want to be. And, I want to encourage other people to sort of take that approach too. If there's something you don't like, that's fine. You don't have to play it. Go do something else. There are so many great games out there and so many things that are super fun. Why are we wasting our time yelling at things we don't like? This is the thing that is constantly something that is a curiosity to me about the internet. Why do people spend so much time yelling at things they don't like? I think, I don't like this. I'm going to stop doing it. I'm going to move on and do something I do like. For instance, the Batman and Superman cereals they brought out because of the movie. The Batman cereal is the most vile thing I have tasted in a really long time. It's strawberry chocolate. It tastes like neither and smells like bile. So I'm not going to eat it. And that's the way I feel about games too. I'm not going to spend all this time talking about why I hate a game. But if I feel like people are being unfair to a game, I'm going to say so. And that's not because I want people to like the same games I like. I am saying so because I want gamers, I want consumers to have a fair fair look into the product before they buy it. I want consumers to have a truly informed purchasing decision, not something unnaturally skewed by the reviewer's bias. And I think that's why YouTube has become so popular, because people can watch me play a game, see that I'm having fun with the game, but still think, I don't think that's my thing. I don't like first-person melee, or I don't like all the QuickTime events or whatever. And I finally get YouTube. Like, I now get the whole YouTube gaming thing. It took a while, but now I understand it. I understand why it's the preferred method of how people make their purchasing decisions about a game, and I think that's going to make me better at presenting games on YouTube. So that's the takeaway for this. I want to know from you guys, how do you want me to do games on this service? I am open to the idea of potentially expanding into Twitch, but I'm going to need a lot of advice on that. My attitude on Twitch is, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right, and I want to do it right the first time. I'm not opposed to that, but I also want to do some content that stays up as well. Just because I want to make sure if I do Twitch, it's that same time, same day every week, so that there's consistency, because that is important. And the one last thing I want, because it is Feedback Friday, I put this out on Twitter, and the answer was pretty overwhelming on Twitter. But I want to ask you guys. I want to change my Twitter banner, because I've had that "you are blocked" thing up for a really long time, and I want to change that. So what should it be? The overwhelming vote was sort of montage of Momo photos. That's probably what it's gonna be, but I wanted to open it up to you guys too. So hope everybody has a great weekend full of fun games, and looking forward to your feedback.